You're listening to Paul G's Corner, where history proves that saying it can't happen here usually means it already did. Bruce Edward Irving starts his morning the same way every patriot does. Coffee cooling on the counter, a lab coat ironed within an inch of his life, and a quick prayer that the world doesn't fall apart before lunch. And at Fort Detrick, that last part is never actually guaranteed. He badges into USM Reed, the U.S. Army's infectious disease fortress, the kind of building where the walls hum, the lights glare, and the air feels filtered enough to chew. 25 years he's been here, 2.5 decades staring at anthrax spores so stubborn they might as well be carved from spite. Bruce is brilliant, awkward, earnest to a fault. The kind of man who writes holiday cards in July so he won't forget later. And the kind who leaves notes at midnight because loose ends bother him more than sleep ever will. Outside those gates, Frederick, Maryland wakes like any quiet American town. And inside, Bruce watches the line between safety and catastrophe thin one lab shift at a time. He spent years warning anyone who would listen, and plenty who wouldn't, that biological threats are not theoretical. They're not exotic. They're not movie plots. They're just dust, powder, breath, and one mistake away from a headline. People nodded, they thanked him, and moved on. The way you do when the man talking is intense, sincere, and inconvenient. Then came September 11th, 2001. It hit like a plate shattering on the floor. Bruce was in the lab when a voice down the hallway cursed, and a radio snapped louder. Someone said a plane hit the World Trade Center. It was confusion, not fear. He stepped into the break room. The TV bolted to the wall showed smoke pouring out of a place he'd never been, but somehow knew like a relative. Then the second plane hit. No one spoke. The breath left the building. Bruce grabbed the back of a chair as the south tower collapsed. The gray bloom rose, a concrete avalanche punching upward before the entire structure folded like a collapsing cathedral. It felt like seconds. A half an hour had crawled by before the second tower fell. The timing didn't matter. The disbelief did. The Pentagon wound appeared on screen next, a blackened wound carved into stone. No footage, just aftermath. News of the downed plane in Pennsylvania arrived hours later, maybe the next day for some. Bruce stood frozen as he learned what those passengers did. Calling loved ones, accepting the cost, choosing action anyway. Ordinary Americans running a play no one had trained them for. This mattered to Bruce. It planted something in him, a seed of righteousness, twisted by grief and faith and disappointment. That's when the phones at Detrick began ringing. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Could the next attack be biological? Bruce told the truth. Yes, it could. No drama. Just the certainty of a man who's lived his whole career bracing for a threat no one else took seriously. And for a moment, a brief, trembling moment, it felt like someone might finally listen. But that feeling didn't survive the week, because Washington can't multitask fear. The planes took priority. Buildings, enemies with flags and borders. Biology went back in the drawer, and Bruce went with it. The meetings vanished. His experience went from essential to optional once again. And that sting, the one that had been building for years, finally found somewhere to land. Maybe, Bruce thought, maybe I can show them. Barely a week later, before the country had even caught its breath, another threat slipped into the maelstream like it had been waiting for its cue. The nation was still staring at holes in its skyline when a newsroom in Boca Raton cracked open a letter that looked no different than the electric bills and subscription renewals stacked beneath it. Inside was a single sentence that felt like a dare, a whisper sharpened into a threat, and beneath it, A dusting of pale powder. Robert Stevens, a photo editor who lived life at deadline speed and didn't scare easy, carried the envelope across the room without a second thought. Nobody in that newsroom had the vocabulary to imagine danger in something lighter than a breath. He fell ill days later, fast and violent, the kind of collapse that makes doctors look at each other with fear they don't dare voice. They wrestled with symptoms they hadn't seen outside of textbooks. Reporters whispered. The country hadn't even finished counting its dead from New York and Washington when a new, quieter panic began curling under the doors. Anthrax. A word that hits like a fist when the country is already on its knees. It was real, and it was here. Bruce Ivins felt the news hit him like a shove between the shoulder blades. The kind of shove the universe gives you when it's tired of your PowerPoints and wants to make a point of its own. This was the nightmare scenario he'd outlined in memos and briefings and late-night emails. The ones people thanked him for and promptly forgot. And now Bruce has pulled it out and dumped it into a newsroom. The next letters appeared. At NBC News, the New York Post, Senator Tom Daschle and Patrick Leahy, men whose mailrooms turned into a federally sanctioned quarantine chamber before the sun went down. 5 dead, 17 poisoned. Postal hubs shut down like crime scenes, sorting machines swaddled in plastic, scrubbed until metal shone through the bleach. Nothing says national crisis like treating your own infrastructure the way a bachelor treats a suspicious Tupperware. Now the Postal Service, America's most unassuming circulatory system, suddenly felt like a weapon someone had repurposed. And in Frederick, Maryland, Bruce watched it unfold like a prophecy stolen. Not vindication, not triumph, but something heavier. The FBI christened the case Anthrax, a name that tried to sound heroic while the fear underneath spread faster than the paperwork. Inside the Hoover Building, whiteboards marched down hallways, charts and timelines stacked like geological layers of panic. Every possibility bloomed at once. Foreign plots, domestic loners, disgruntled scientists, accidents, revenge. But the genome refused to join the chaos. It was one lineage, one signature, with only one parent stock, leaving no mystery hiding in the margins. RMR 1029. A dense, highly studied flask of anthrax. Bruce's flask. The unmarked sedans appeared shortly after, crawling into his life like shadows that memorized his routine. They were first parked across the street, watching him like they were taking attendance, then tailing him through Frederick's quiet intersections, then idling long enough for the neighbors to start peeking through blinds. At work, conversations thinned when he stepped in the doorways. A colleague's smile held a half-second too long. The kind of smile used when they're deciding whether you're tragic or contagious. Silence became the new kind of weather. Bruce changed under it. The pressure didn't crush him all at once. It bent him, one silent degree at a time. The hairline cracks forming long before anyone hears the shattering. His emails drifted into guilt and salvation. His notes looped. He prayed more. He slept in the shards, with his world narrowing to the tense space between suspicion and collapse. By July 2008, the verdict might as well have been etched in steel. When the FBI finally interrogated him, he murmured, "I can't tell what's real anymore." It wasn't a confession, more of a diagnosis. The grand jury was circling. Reporters were orbiting Frederick like scavengers learning a new migration pattern. Bruce moved through his days like he was carrying something fragile and explosive in the same hand. Every step a quiet gamble. Then one summer evening, he swallowed Tylenol and codeine in a dose no human body walks away from, leaving no manifesto, no final sermon, just a quiet exit. 2 days later, he died at Frederick Memorial. The Justice Department named him the sole perpetrator. For them, it was case closed. Except wounds like this have a habit of leaking longer than it takes for the paperwork to dry. The letters hadn't all looked the same. One batch felt crude, almost hurried. Another carried a finer, more deliberate touch. The kind that suggested time, patience, or simply just a different pair of hands. People whispered about it in labs and conference rooms, never loud enough to own the theory, but never quiet enough for it to completely disappear. Experts still argue that Bruce couldn't have made both batches. Others swear he absolutely could. The arguments circle each other the way scientists do when everybody has data, but no one has certainty. And the only thing left that might settle the question sits in a freezer, sealed and cataloged, waiting for a truth no one is sure that they want to confirm. America did what wounded nations always do when fear outpaces understanding. It reacted before it breathed. It opened the treasury and prayed money could outmuscle biology. Panic paid the bills, and preparedness was whatever made the fear quiet down long enough to get a little sleep. Billions poured into biodefense programs, sensors for postal hubs, screened mail for Capitol Hill, new lab standards, psychological evaluations, interagency drills scripted to the second. And for a while, vigilance felt like muscle memory. The country stayed jumpy just enough to alphabetize its anxieties, and then we did what we always do. The budget shrank, priorities drifted, urgency thinned, and our memory softened. Fort Detrick still hums under fluorescent lights, a fortress pretending normalcy while history presses its ear to the walls. The soil still hides pockets of anthrax the way old towns hide scandals. Yes, it's still there. Buried, but not gone. Mail still glides through scanners built in the long shadow of a fear most people pretend they've forgotten, even though their pulse remembers it for them. Some remember those weeks in a way their bodies won't let them forget. The cracked hands from too much washing, the chemical sting of bleach that hangs in the air, and that split-second pause before touching a piece of mail that used to mean nothing more dangerous than a late bill. Everyone else shoved the memory into the attic of national history, that dusty space where we hide moments we swear won't matter again. Until they step back into the doorway and remind us that they never left. So you've been listening to Paul G's Corner, told by the same man who keeps poking history with a stick just to see what crawls out. Yes, that's me. If this episode shifted the way you think about the quieter parts of American paranoia, well, then maybe my job here is done and your worldview is slightly more dented. Perfect. Now, if you want to carry a little bit of this madness with you into the daylight, swing by paulgnewton.com. You can pick up the CSI Walmart Parking Lot Arkansas Division t-shirt. If you enjoy treating everyday nonsense like it's a federal investigation. I know I do. Or you can grab the Squid Wars shirt. Yes, Squid Wars. It's ideal for anyone who understands the universe is absurd, the stakes are high, and sometimes the only correct response is to fight imaginary cephalopods with kittens. When you do, it keeps the lights on, the mics warm, and helps me spot my own people out in the wild. I saw you. Anyway, stay sharp. I guess stay curious. And stay awake to the quiet places where danger waits for an opening. Because the loud monsters, they're easy to spot. It's the quiet ones, especially the ones in lab coats, that gets written into chapters like this.